Good afternoon on what is a very changeable day. It has been raining, it has been blustery, it's been overcast. Now it's a bit brighter, and I'm back out here in the reading nook with a nice hot cup of tea and a cat who is not ours, who wants my attention, and some parcels to unbox. So the next thing I am going to unbox is this. So let's find out where, let's see where I need to apply the sharp blade. Being aware of that, I'm being careful of the cat here because I don't want to stab him. Yeah, hello. So let's get this knife in. Let's just, damn what he's done here. Okay, right. And I think that the threat of me possibly stabbing him, the cat who is not ours, has left. There we go. Yeah, taking a bit of effort to get into this, but I will. Here we go. Almost there, almost there, almost there. And there we go. So, I'm pulling out the first thing I have got is this. Now, this isn't, okay, this is the best of White Dwarf Scenarios Volume 3, which was, let's have a look, published in 1985, and includes 5 complete role-playing adventures in one volume, including a complete AD&D city, Irilian, and scenarios for Call of Cthulhu, Traveller, and RuneQuest. Now, this is the third of the book of best of scenarios that Games Workshop published from its pages of White Dwarf. And the great thing about the best of series, because they did also one for articles, again 3, is that this compiled the best of titles that pieces that readers couldn't get hold of previously, because the issues where they appeared had gone out of print. So the publisher would basically trawl back through all the back issues and pick out the best and bring them into one article, one magazine. And for the princely sum of £1.95, you would get the best of basically the previous 2 or 3 years. Because let me just try to think. The Dragon did it, and they did 5 volumes, basically going through up to about 1986, 1987, and again, Dragon was a much longer running magazine in terms of its hobby gaming, whereas White Dwarf, of course, changed and went to hobby gaming, built around particular intellectual properties and wargaming. This is back from when it was a role-playing magazine, even though it has an advert for Citadel miniatures on the back, and essentially you have an adventure starter set and a monster starter set. So there's the adventure starter set and there's the monster starter set, and the adventure starter set even comes with a mule. So what have you got in here? So we open up, and nicely we have a advert for Call of Cthulhu 2nd edition, and this would have been the box set that Chaosium licensed to Games Workshop, and it would have been my first exposure to Call of Cthulhu, and that box set is beloved of Call of Cthulhu fans here in the UK, as is the 3rd edition rulebook, which would follow, which would compile the contents of the core rules plus the Call of Cthulhu companion. So we open up. Call of Cthulhu is the, as it says, essentially in limited rights. Issues of White Dwarf go out of print fast these days. That's why we decided to present the best of White Dwarf Scenarios 3 for our more recent readers. Of course, we knew we had to publish the whole Irilian, complete AD&D city, because of its popularity, and request by readers to have it all in one volume. Printing Irilian in one volume did cause some problems, however. It is so extensive we are unable to get more than 4 scenarios in here. Alongside it, despite an increase of 14 pages on the last best of scenarios. There are so many other excellent scenarios we would have liked to put in, but that's why the best of scenarios Volume 4 won't be far away with all of those other quality White Dwarf scenarios we had to pass over this time around. Anyway, enough talk. Here they are, a selection of the best scenarios from the forefront of the British role-playing hobby, White Dwarf magazine. Now, the best of White Dwarf scenarios Volume 4 never appeared. It would have been interesting to see what would have been in that issue, that volume. So we open up with The Watchers of Walberswick, a Call of Cthulhu adventure for any experienced intermediate adventurers set in England of 1934 by John Sutherland. And this would have been the first Call of Cthulhu scenario in White Dwarf. Now, issues 41-42, Marcus L. Rowland had presented content for Call of Cthulhu for adapting it to the modern day. So that was the first Call of Cthulhu content in the magazine, and that was groundbreaking because it presented Call of Cthulhu out of the 1920s, out of the Jazz Age, and presented the possibilities of playing it in the then, here and now, which wasn't possible with the core rules as written. But ultimately it would lead to Chaosium doing Cthulhu Now and presenting collections of modern scenarios like The Stars Are Right, which is one of my favourite anthologies. So this takes place in Walberswick, off essentially the Norfolk coast, I believe. Got a really nice, bright, vibrant map there, shows everything, including basically the Deep One caverns. Yes, I know, spoilers, but hey, it's a 40-year-old scenario. And it's quite a short scenario. Basically, a bit of investigation, sailing out on a trawler, investigating basically a sandbar, and just basically discovering the Deep Ones in their cave. Then we have the Eagle Hunt, an AD&D scenario for first to third level characters of all classes by Marcus R. Rowland. And this has the characters essentially working for the MacGuffin. Yeah, not the MacGuffin, but the MacGuffin and Rose Detective Agency, and investigating theft, which means breaking into the guild headquarters and surrounding areas. And it would have been accompanied by a detective character class type, I seem to recall. And it's you essentially breaking into a thieves guild headquarters underneath a warehouse, and it's sort of like, if you're doing an urban sort of campaign, it's perfect for that. And it's been done a few times in Call of Cthulhu, sort of Call of Cthulhu, Dungeons and Dragons and that sort of thing. For example, there's an Assassin's run in an issue of Dragon magazine, I believe, at one point, I seem to recall. And Shadows over Southport is a scenario, independent Dungeons and Dragons scenario published here in the UK. You can find a review of that on my blog. Did a similar thing where the player characters have to break into a thieves guild headquarters. I'm gonna jump over the next thing because that really want to return to that in a minute. Then for RuneQuest we have Rumble at Tinnin, a barroom brawl for RuneQuest by Michael Cule, who is still active in the hobby. He's got a podcast with Roger Burton West, which I recommend you go and check out. Michael runs a meme game of Tekamel, Empire of the Battle Throne. But Rumble at Tin Inn is sort of like, there was a number of articles or scenarios, I think 3, something like that, about brawls set in inns. So there's one for D&D, and I think there's possibly one for Traveller, and then there was one for basically Rumble at Tin Inn. Now Tin Inn, this is for RuneQuest. Obviously Tin Inn is the clue there, because the Tin Inn is a location famous in RuneQuest, because it's in the hamlet of Apple Lane, which appears in the Apple Lane scenario setting supplement, and is essentially the location where everybody started their RuneQuest campaign, and it was their first experience playing there, because across the road was Gringle's pawn shop, and people would essentially, RuneQuest players would go in and sort of like get hired by Gringle and have to defend Gringle's pawn shop overnight. And what's great about that is essentially, basically tin in was across the road, they're going to get drinks and that kind of thing, and go back to it. And it features more recently in the GM Adventures booklet, in the GM's pack, for RuneQuest role-playing in Glorantha, which is the most modern iteration of the game. And if you've not got that and you're a RuneQuest fan, I recommend heartily that you go and get that. It's a very good pack, and it's a very good source book. The adventures, there's 3 adventures in there set in and around the Hamlet of Apple Lane, and lots of rumours and further suggestions. And this is set at that inn. So we have a big map, a floor plan of the inn, basically the ground floor, and then we have full stats of the characters, so basically like Big R, Dark Troll, and then Thurstus, a bear walker, and so on. There's Marops, who uses a lunar scimitar, who's an ex-mercenary soldier employed by the Lunar's native furthest cavalry corps. So there's a lot of background and interest in here. I think just to go back, and you would think that this scenario is would be set at the height of the lunar occupation, which would be the sort of the classic period of the teens, the 16 teens, 16 sort of like 11 to 1620 of the lunar occupation for RuneQuest. RuneQuest role-playing Glorantha has now moved on to 1625 after the lunar occupation. And I note also we have an advert for the Star Trek role-playing game, Starship Combat Game, which Games Workshop would have also been publishing at the same time under license from Professor. And what's fantastic about these pieces is that essentially there's adverts in them, more often Games Workshop, but they're for Games Workshop releases of the period. And you look back on those as I remember those. Okay, so, and that scenario is basically designed to be pulled out. And then we go on to, that's it more or less. Oh yeah, no, hold on. There is the Snowbird Mystery by Andy Slack, a Traveller scenario using the Traveller basis set and a book 4, which is the Mercenaries. So, okay. And it introduces a Explorer class scout ship, which is a 300-ton scout ship. Capable of crew of 5, capable of jump 5, and basically 2G. So it's a little bit more versatile than the standard 100-ton scout ship which you get generally in Traveller. And what we've got here is essentially characters are a member of the Covert Survey Bureau for the Scouts, and essentially you have the player characters have to investigate the mystery of a missing ship. Andy Slack would contribute multiple scenarios and content for Traveller over the years, and it was all really good. I don't know how much it made canon. I'm not a Traveller scholar, but others would attest to that. But if you've got a copy, get a copy of this, or you'll get a good scenario in there. Now there is one big scenario which I've not mentioned so far. And it is this. Okay, just flip through, and it is Daniel Collerton's Irilian, and that started, I think, would have been, I think, White Dwarf 41, 42. I sort of remember at that point I would have been sort of like I wouldn't have been very old. I would have been in my early teens, and picking up a copy of White Dwarf. I picked up a copy of White Dwarf from a newsagent in Bournemouth, where I'd gone with my sisters to see, I believe, Indiana Jones and probably the Temple of Doom. And I can remember picking the issue up and starting to read and going, well, what's Irilian? I think I probably picked up sort of like the second part, and I had to go back and find the first part, and that led to me subscribing and beginning into White Dwarf. So we're really kind of at the start of my gaming hobby, and I've been gaming for a few years, but I only occasionally glanced at White Dwarf because other friends had it, and I've got into it. Irilian presents a city and a huge campaign around the safety of that city. It's part one of a 6-part series detailing an AD&D card town, Irilian. Each part features an episode of a linked scenario, The Rising of the Dark, as well as background information to introduce the characters of the town. Irilian first appeared in White Dwarf 42 and ran in White Dwarf 47, 33 pages, packed with background and information and an excellent scenario. A scenario and series of this scope has never been tried before in any of the magazine. It proved very popular, so here it is this time complete. White Dwarf 42, I would have picked it up, and I think it was the first issue, and it made me want to go and subscribe and get further issues. And I think a lot of people have taken an interest in this scenario, and there have been playthroughs of it since, and I think this is a scenario which is worthy of not just a reprint. If somebody could get hold of it and get the rights to it and do a proper representation of it for the old school Renaissance, so that would be really great. So we have basically we've got scenes from it, and then I remember this from basically the classic, its original presentation. And we get into part 2. Part 1 takes you to Irilian, doesn't get you in there, and then we get into part 2 where we have the full map, start mapping out the city, and that's done essentially quarter by quarter. And we have this fantastic map in here with the particular locations, and that would have been done on at the time would have been done sort of on the Games Workshop kind of mapping paper, which they did, which was hex squares but with a thin border between each square, so you could sort of colour in the walls. You could basically, it wasn't just a line wall, it's a thick wall like on there, as you can see, and then spaces for the windows and the doors and so on. And you have scenes like this, somebody pouring their slopped pot out on poor unfortunate. So we go on to part 3, and you can see here, there's one half of the city in its glory. In between the scenario, in between the Rumble Inn, and then there's the other half, and then more maps and so on. So, and again, you can see it's a fairly dense scenario. You've got a lot of information in there, but it's information essentially about the town of Irilian, and what's going on there, and then the plot as well. And it's sort of like classic of, there's a big evil magic user coming back to doing nasty things, and you could use it and take it and adapt it to the setting of the basic setting of choice, because it's as it goes, it's setting neutral. So you could take it and just drop it into your campaign setting, or in your role-playing game. So you could take it, I can imagine, okay, I'm going to run a game using Forbidden Lands from Free League, or you adapt it to Warhammer. You could do all that if you wanted to. And obviously the most obvious thing to do is run it using Dungeons & Dragons, whichever variant you want to use of that. So if it's the most obvious thing to do with that these days would be to use Osric or Advanced Labyrinth Lord for your advanced, basically gives you your advanced options for to basically replicate Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Or you could actually easily do it Old School Essentials, basically strip it down slightly, and if you've got the advanced genre books, you can have the advanced options in there. So that's Irilian. Fantastic campaign, as I recall. I would actually love to revisit and play it. That would be really interesting, and it's got lots of potential, and I would love to see it come back if someone could get the rights and essentially redevelop it. It's a lovely piece of nostalgia, and of course the best of White Dwarf articles, it's complete nostalgia from beginning to end, and worth looking at if you can find a copy online, and you will be able to via eBay. There's lots of good scenarios in here. If you can find the previous editions of this, i.e. volumes 1 and 2, You will not be disappointed by the range of scenarios in there. Really good, really playable. White Dwarf was famous for its scenarios, had some absolute classics, ones that are worth playing again these days, today, and you'd enjoy them just as you would back in the 80s and 70s and 80s, or even basically for the first time. Anyway, thank you very much for watching another unboxing in the Nook. If you've enjoyed this, please do hit the subscribe button down below, and of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, appreciate you posting those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me with a package, okay, and a magazine or a game or a book, which I will basically unbox and talk about to the best extent of my knowledge for 10 minutes or so. This one's run a bit longer. All, of course, accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then please do hit that subscribe button. And of course, in this instance, accompanied by a cat who is not ours, but he is keeping my lap warm just as I'm keeping him warm. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I'll be back again soon with another unboxing in the Nook. Bye for now.